Hey everybody, today we have another special guest, Lorra Ley, and Lorra is from Moldova in the Balkans. Is it the Balkans?
It's between Romania and Ukraine. It's a little bit on the side, but yeah, near that Carpathian Mountains, not so far.
Not so far. And how is it there? How is the world there? What are you going through?
The craziness, you mean? It's mostly fine. We had like a total lockdown in last spring. So when it all started, we had like a 3 months where everything got shut down basically. And then I must say we had it quite good. The anxiety levels and the fear levels are rising and falling. Now that winter is here, yeah, you can see and feel that people are way more afraid. And of course, the propaganda has sunken in very, very nicely, very intensely. So life continues. People have various different opinions. And yeah, I just try to, when I go out, to be as loving and confident as I can be. But yeah, looking outside what is happening in other parts of the world, it was much, let's say, milder, not so intense here. So yeah, I'm quite lucky, and I'm lucky because I left Germany a year before. I lived in Germany for most part of my life, and then I left intuitively and ended up in a better place than there, because there it's also very, very strict.
So why did you choose Moldova? Why did you choose there? Is that where you were born and then you went to Germany?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. So there is a country that officially does not exist. It is used to be part of Moldova when it was all Soviet Union. So I was born there. There people are a little bit more, let's say, Slavic. Lighter hair, more Russian influenced, more Ukrainian influenced, because it's right on the border. So I was born there. And then my mother took me to Germany when I was about 3 or 4. But these beginning years of my life were very, they got into my DNA. That's where I grew up. That's where I feel more comfortable, was very close to nature, very simple life. So yeah, I decided I wanted to leave Germany for a very long time. I didn't felt comfortable with the mentality, although there are beautiful places and I met beautiful people, but I always knew that I needed to go somewhere else to take on the next step. And so I decided to just check out where I was born and landed in Moldova basically. And then, yeah, life happened and I stayed, and I'm almost 3 years now here, almost 3 years. Yeah.
Oh, good. So, so tell us what your spiritual background is. You have a YouTube channel and it's under your name, isn't it? And you talk about anything that sort of comes up about in your spiritual perspective, your spiritual life. But I noticed that you've sort of gone into a little bit of the Tartaria stuff as well.
Yeah.
Which is really fascinating. So tell us about your spiritual background.
Oh, so I'm basically all over the place. That's also, I'm an artist, so I always was interested in many different aspects when it comes to spirituality, when it comes to knowledge. I have always been interested in various aspects that I had kind of, that I could find, that I could grasp. And with spirituality, it was interesting because I have always been connected to nature. I've always been very much by myself due to my life circumstances. Also, I was moving a lot of the time, almost every year. So I always spend a lot of time by myself and in nature. And I always talked to trees and fairies and made up songs and sang with the squirrels. My spiritual awakening, like the really blasting, like I call it a slap in the face, happened around 5 years ago, when I started really starting to do research and really kind of leaving my old life, my old ambitions and goals behind, because I was realizing also what the world was actually about and how everything functioned here, which I always felt. I was always kind of a rebel. I didn't like, what's the opposite of authenticity? Inauthentic behavior and people, and it always felt very dreamlike and very weird. So I had problems being in my body and staying in my body. So life always kind of felt dreamlike to me, and I couldn't really distinguish between the realities that I was experiencing from childhood. But basically, 5 years ago, I started to watch documentaries about nature, and suddenly it clicked inside, and I was like, no, this is not random. This is not what everybody else is like talking about, like all of these very materialistic views. It's like, I was like, no, this can't just be, this is by design. This is so beautiful and intricate, and there is just so much variety. And from then on, I started researching all kinds of different stuff about the pyramids. There was one thing that I came across that talked about the crystal skulls. Mm-hmm. Have you heard about them?
Yes.
Yeah, the crystal skulls. And I was reading books and watching just random shows that I could find. And actually, Ancient Aliens was one of them. And I come from an acting background, so I was aware that they tried to paint a certain picture with the music and the cuts, and so it looked a little bit, ridiculous and over the top. But I got a lot of really interesting hints, and where could I do some research on it. So from that point on, I abandoned my old self, basically my old life, but mostly my old goals, and just said, okay, I'm going to start this journey in, my number one goal was to learn to trust myself and my intuition. So, I was basically moving from couch to couch to couch for about 3 years, and just like, trying to find out what I want to do in life. I was healing trauma and sort of not provoking, but being open to situations where I could look at what hurts inside and kind of work on that. And a big part of that was that I always longed for help, for support, but I wasn't really good at, receiving support and help. And I had a lot of shame inside myself. So I was working on all of these kinds of different things throughout the past 3 to 5 years. And just studying everything that I could find. And as I said, my main goal was to trust myself. And one of my first rules was that there are no gurus beside my inner knowing. So I would never give my power or give anybody that I was watching or listening to or learning from the responsibility for what I decide, what fits in my experience of life. So I think these two things were the most important and valuable that I kind of clinged on to from the beginning. And I love magic, I love nature, I love dragons and fairies, but I also love galactic knowledge. And when I started to learn about starseed and all of these star nations and all of this really beautiful manifestation of consciousness all around us, I felt home for the first time, and I knew, all right, that's my shtick. That's my thing.
That's what really resonated in you. That sort of knowledge, that train of thought, all that. Yeah.
Starseeds was one of the most intense and most complex until this day, because I have memories came back from all sorts of different lifetimes, from this world, from the earth, from other star civilizations and other consciousnesses like nature spirits and stuff like that. And I had different spirit guides come in and out, and I would just feel and learn about these different variations of consciousness, and I found that to be very fulfilling and exciting.
Yeah. And the reason I actually contacted you was because of your light language video that you did. And as you know, I speak light language, and I'm always curious to chat to people who also speak light language. So how did that come up for you?
I tried to remember today because I knew you would ask me that question, and I can't quite grasp it, but I have a couple of points. I don't know, my memory sometimes is blurry in certain aspects and then very clear in others. Like I can't remember dreams from the time I was 4 or 3, but yeah. So I think, so I started to get into drawing again, which I did when I was younger, and I would often have like very intense, energetic rushes throughout my body. And when I was drawing, my hand would shake. And I came across light language, I think, through the starseed sphere, let's call it that. And I think I read about it, and then I was just like, all right, I'm just going to let my hand do this squiggling, so to speak, when it was shaking. And what I got were these vertical lines, like in Chinese, I think you go from up to down. And then I also started to speak because, as I said, from childhood, I used to make up songs and poems, and sometimes I would just drift away and speak in other languages, but I wasn't aware back then fully. And yeah, it happened all quite at the same time. So I would start to speak light language in situations where I was in distress, when I would feel sort of, panic, or just to comfort myself. And I also felt like this consciousness that came through, this energy that came through, was a part of myself, from another version of myself, so to speak. And I think for me, there are two main women that come through. One is around, just for the general understanding, one is around, I think, like 40, not the energy that I have right now, but a little bit more mature, a little bit more in the future, but more in the womanhood. And then, like I said, this very old, wise, funny and sassy grandmother that would just like tell stories, and I would see stories like movies, like sort of Lord of the Rings, a little bit something like that. And also through Lord of the Rings, I always felt I gravitated towards Elvish and how they would speak. So a lot of that it's a very calming, wise, and nurturing energy. Also at that time, I started to connect with dragons. So I think the one that really pushed the energy, that really pushed it a little bit more forward, that I became more comfortable in writing and speaking, were the dragons. So the dragon energy kind of enlightened, that sparked that fire. And from then on, I'm just incorporating it in my art, and I love to speak it. And yeah, it's a very interesting, I've never came across something like that. It's like in the descriptions, when you read about it, it kind of, it doesn't have to go through the ego. It's pure. And it's really interesting to feel that kind of awareness. And it's sort of like it has its own personality, and it's really expanding from inside when you let that in and let it go through you. It matures, and through that also a lot of memories came back. So yeah, light language is something very special, and I think very it feels ancient. It feels very ancient and very expanded than any kind of information or perspective that we can convey with our current language, and maybe even in the past with other languages, who knows.
Yeah, it's definitely from other frequencies and dimensions. I often say it can come from a couple of different places for me, but it's me in the future and it's me in the past. So it's coming from another when. So sometimes it's just me. It's coming from a soul memory of who I am going to be and all of, you know. But for me, the light language has been very beneficial in healing my own emotional things, my own emotional blocks. And when I first started to speak it, I didn't know what it was. And I'd never heard the term light language. It's so funny. I'd been on a journey, it's my own spiritual journey for, 30 years, 25, 30 years. And I had never heard the term light language. So when I started to speak it, I was like, what in the world is this? But every time I would sit down to meditate, at a certain point when the energy would begin to rise, then the language would come out. And I just would go with it, and I'd forget meditating. I'd just be, chatting, and I'd end up walking around my house, talking it. And I could be listening, like I'd have a podcast on, and there'd be a podcast and some people are talking, and then the light language would answer or comment on the podcast. And so like there was this, it was very funny. So whoever it was at that early stage was obviously right there with me the whole time. And so when I would hear the podcast, and then there would be this light language back in response, because mine is has very much a lot of personality, because mine, you can really feel the different energies of the people. Some people, it's just the same sort of tone all the way through. But it's like me, they're very demonstrative. They gesticulate and hand movements and, all this sort of stuff. But the healing that can happen with it, and that's sort of why I always encourage people that if you do speak it all the time, that you can, because it is recoding and recalibrating your own energy system. And as you know, all of our emotions have at their core energy. So when we're experiencing an emotional challenge, if we can get back to the energy that's at the core of that and feel it and process it, that changes it all, that transmutes the energy and changes the emotion. And that's why I would always encourage people to just speak it when you're feeling not great, or speak it when you're facing a challenge, that it will help recode and alter things. And I suppose for the first 6 months that I got light language, I worked every single day on emotional things. I would sit down and write and bring through intuitively the correct harmonic and tone that would help heal this. And it was like a job. I just did it every day for 6 months. And it would take about 45 minutes to get through each aspect of this. And then by the end of it was gone. The trouble or the emotion and things. So it's incredibly powerful. And you're correct in, I think, that it circumvents the ego. It's not being filtered through me, because a lot of the time I don't know what I'm saying. Like I don't have a word for word translation. It's just an image, or it's a few words. And in that respect, it's brought up another level of trust within me, because how do I know? How I know what I'm saying is the response of the people who are listening. And people feel like it's a hug, or people feel like it's an old friend, or people actually start to tear up and cry. So it's been an incredible journey for me. And it's been for about the last 3 years that I've had light language, and it comes up in my healing sessions. It just, as I said, it pops up even like if I'm listening to a podcast or in the car, and I'll be just driving along, and all of a sudden the language will come up, and it's just discussing where I am and what the world is like at this moment, or what even silly things like the weather or how beautiful nature is, it will come up. And it doesn't necessarily have to be hugely profound. It can just be a part. And I think that's what will happen. It'll become a part of our everyday lives in interesting ways. Yeah.
Yes, oh, that's motivating me to start speaking it a little bit more often. I do it in my art, because I'm currently creating or finishing a lot of my paintings. So it's like it's really nice to bring it down in the physical. But yes, you're right, because also what I noticed is it doesn't, for me, but also when I heard other people speak, it's without doubt, and it's just like pure confidence and pure knowing. There was like no hesitation, no doubt, nothing that would go on in my emotional or mental body, because the programs are still there. But yeah, it's you're right. After that, I just feel completely clean and in a very different confidence and trust, as you said. Definitely, it's a massively powerful tool. I did some sessions on my mother because she asked me, so I'm not doing it with other people, but I did some on her, and I did it with I guess it's a form of Reiki, but also what we didn't talk about were the hand movements that also go oftentimes with it. And I spoke to her, and what I noticed when I did that, I had no clue what I was doing. I was like, all right, guys, so let's go, let's do this. Let's clear that out. And then not only clearing, but also putting in new energy. And what I noticed, what came through for her was a lot of just calling back in the soul, talking to the soul and reminding it that it has a place in the body, that it needs to come back into the body and embody the soul in the body, basically. But yes, also the hand gestures, which is funny because I used to go out clubbing a lot and dancing, especially to electronic music. And it's like flying. You basically shuffle your way through on the dance floor and you move your hands a lot. And I noticed back then that I think, I'm quite sure that was also a form of the light language that wanted to come through, because it was very active with my body a lot of the times. So I also like to incorporate the hand gestures too. You do that too? Or what's your favorite part of it?
Well, I've been a dancer all my life. I love to dance, and particularly to electronic music. A lot of, I can't really remember, but a lot of sort of the Scandinavian sort of European type of electronic music. Esto je za majato kod sekati kande stikko kochitako mokikatsa. Iste estusta, asietako mujatsaka akike, etso uste eshusha asiata. Izekoka atsi et tuste eziambakike. So when I first used to dance, I would do this hand gestures. And this was when I was in my 20s. And there were a couple of words that would come up when I would dance. And I would just say these words, which didn't mean anything to me in those days. I didn't know what they meant. And when the light language came up 3 years ago, I recognized the hand gestures that I was doing and this word. So it's been that it is there. And one of my favorite ways to meditate is to dance. And how you do it, I've done it a lot, blindfolded. So you really block out the world and you just find a space that's safe. You're not going to bump into anything. And often to this sort of electronic-y, trancey type music.
Yeah.
And when you dance, this is my experience, you get out of the image, you get out of the ego, and you just give your body free rein to move how it feels. So you let the music dance you. rather than you dance to the music.
Yes.
And you just move, and it is very healing for the body when you dance like that. And it is easy to dance other frequencies.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're blindfolded and you're just feeling the music, or when you've just got your eyes closed, you don't have to be blindfolded, or in a darkened room. It's just so that you're not stimulated by all the things out there. So when you're dancing, and you can actually dance Christ consciousness, or you can dance the energies of a dragon. You can absolutely, it somehow allows you to put aside who you have lived all of your life and embody another frequency. And it's easy to do it for me when I dance. And I suppose it is like ecstatic dance. I did a dance for quite a few years called Five Rhythms. Gabriel Roth devised it in the 60s, and you start with a very slow rhythm, and then it moves up a bit more, and then at the top of it, it's really drummy and with lots of beats, and then it comes back down again. And so I love doing that, and that's just free form dance. But absolutely, it is incredibly healing when you dance and when you become these frequencies. And often when I would do that, that's when the hand movements would come. It's putting aside who you think you are. It's putting aside and totally letting a deeper part of you come out. It's in a way, it's almost like acting, in that you put aside who you are and become something else. And yes, the dancing is the same. So yeah, that's when I first noticed it, when I was in my 20s and I was dancing.
Interesting. I never heard from somebody else that same connection, and I don't think I also talked about. I don't think I even realized it actually until our conversation right now. Yes, definitely, and it feels very much very close to flying. Like yes, you're completely right. It's a very transcendental way of being. And what I remember is that one time you were like in an open field, and the party was almost like kind of over, but we were still dancing. Like we were like crazy folks. We would dance until the music went out, and then we would scream for more music. But on the ground, there were like lying all of these bottles around. And I remember that I was dancing with closed eyes, and I would never fall. I would never even, bump into any kind of bottle. Like my body intuitively was like moving around it. And yes, I actually was thinking about doing some short videos for YouTube, or not for YouTube, putting them then on YouTube, where I danced to electronic music. And I actually thought I would just like pop in some Tatarian pictures, some old world pictures, and mix it in with a little bit more of a modern thing. But yes, I think the light language is a big part of that. And I already downloaded a couple of tracks that are free. So I'm definitely going to do this the next couple of days. It's going to be very healing for sure.
Yeah, because we walk around sort of in a physical way, very familiar with this, very familiar with how it feels and how it moves. And when you get out of it and allow it to move, and sometimes it's not graceful at all. Sometimes it's like, like this sort of stuff, because the body's healing, the body's releasing frequencies. So you just have to go with it. And Alignment, I love dancing. I would encourage anybody to do it, to just get out of who you think you are, who you think you've been. And the dancing just allows you to, and I think the music is very much reminiscent, or helps us tap into higher frequencies. The music is the reason it resonates is because it's like we live within music in the higher frequencies. It is music, the higher frequencies.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sorry, my cat is a little bit doing stuff over here, but also this kind of electronic trance, minimal techno, very. It depends on what you like, but I think it's also a little bit closer to galactic consciousness and to sort of a. I wouldn't describe it as very earthly, let's say like that, like more drums and flute and things like that. I would tend to put that more in contact with the earth plane, but these kind of more of electronic types of music are very more galactic, I would say.
Well, what we'll do is beneath this video, we'll put some music in that we love to dance to. So if people are interested, we'll put sort of a little music list. And so you can have a go yourself. Just put the lights down and just go for it. Yeah, perfect. So I saw my dogs are here at the moment too. They're wondering what's going on. So you were talking about on one of your videos recently about your dark night of the soul. And I feel that at this moment on the planet, some people are experiencing their very first dark night of the soul.
Definitely.
Can you talk about, well, I know that it's very profound when you have a dark night of the soul, and that it is incredibly transformative and bursts you out into the next level, or breaks you out into a new you, a deeper level, or a more real you, I suppose. But would you talk about your experience of your dark night of the soul?
Sure. Well, where to start? Well, what I definitely can say about it, it's that it blew up or opened up my psychic abilities. So I was so at the same, there were different things happening at the same time. One, my psychic abilities were just like blowing up, and I would start very intensely to feel everything around me, everyone around me. The second thing was that all of the trauma that was stored in the physical, mental, and emotional body also came up to the surface at the same time. And I kind of was catapulted into the lower astral, I would say. So it was like a very bad psychedelic trip where all of these things also, I think, happen at the same time. And I got a very wide vision of all of the darkness that is inside of me and inside of the world that I was aware of before. But it was just like, okay, well, I'm just traumatized, or I just don't fit into this kind of life because I don't understand it. I can't connect to it energetically. But it was a 1 year where I actually felt, besides all of the things that I just mentioned, I felt myself dying inside my body. So I felt that the being that I was, and that was a couple of years before I started doing like the spiritual research and learning what's actually going on. I felt like the being inside of me was not integrated in my body, and it felt like my body was too small for my being. It was restricting me, and plus, of course, all of this disturbing stuff that I was seeing when I closed my eyes, when I went out and just saw people on the street. It was a very intense and interesting experience. And one of the things that I actually didn't talk about in the video that I did about it was that at the time, just to keep myself healthy, because I couldn't go to acting school that I was in back then, I started to do modeling. It wasn't really modeling. I was actually just organizing my own photo shoots. And a lot of them were actually connected to fairies, connected to all of this more earth spirit type beings. And I would portray that within these photo shootings. So that creative outlet helped me a lot to kind of facilitate beauty and connection back to the higher realms, so to speak, within that period of time. And this very, very intense time where we actually did feel it was not just an ego death that we go through, and that we go through a couple of times, many times in different versions of our life. I think it was like literally I felt something inside of me was dying. And yeah, I didn't had any sort of orientation on what was really going on. I just thought I was severely depressed. But I also knew that I think what also was happening was that I connected to lifetimes where I was in the dark, where I was serving the dark. And that was also really interesting. I think that started the integration of darkness, and then later came the light into it. But I first had to look at the shadows within me, within the world, within past lives, and what exists beyond the material, what we can perceive and what can disturb us just in the material world. So yes, that was a really interesting and very intense period of my life. Definitely for 1 year, it was like hell on earth. But I got out of there. I changed my location after that, and just left behind a lot of people and connections, and started to orient myself towards a more peaceful future, I think. But then it took me again around 3 years to then have the awakening. So I had kind of a recalibration time where I still was following my old goals, like becoming a famous actress and embodying all of these different personalities and things like that. And I had no choice. I knew that if I would stay in this old life, in my old self, in this place, that I would no longer have the ability to live on. I didn't know what would happen, but I knew that if I don't make a huge change and follow my intuition, I would basically just stop existing in some way. So yeah, that was my experience with it.
Yeah, mine was not so dramatic as yours, in that connecting with, not connecting with the lower astral. I didn't go through that sort of thing, but I did realize that I couldn't go on the way that I had been living, and that I couldn't see a way forward. I didn't know, from who I'd been all of the, those 27 years, I couldn't think what was next. I had no concept of what was next. And that was when I just said, that's it, I'm done. And I said to God, I'm finished. If you want to take me, you can. I don't know where I'm supposed to go. I don't know what I'm supposed to do, but this isn't it. And I just gave it all up. I surrendered. And that was within a couple of days. I met somebody who gave me my first spiritual book. And then I went on this big journey. But talking about the lower astral, there's a couple of books that would explain this. And this is how I understood it. There's a guy called Robert Monroe, and he created the Monroe Institute in the United States. And he has a couple of books, Far Journeys and Journeys Out of the Body. And he, in the late 50s, had his first out-of-body experience. And he went through the layers of energy and frequency that are really surrounding the plane, or I was going to say surrounding the planet, but it's a bit of a dicey
really
topic
about this. I'm like, chill out, it's just a word. It's not saying that it's a marble, it's just the plane T, a planet. All right,
yes, that's exactly. I know I'm a bit like this, but so anyway, when he would first go out of his body, for a long time he had to deal with those lower astral beings, and they were thought forms of us, and they were beings who hadn't moved on. And he finally learned to come to peace with them, and then he started moving through them very easily. But it was almost like it was part of his initiation to cope with all of these situations in this astral. The other book I would recommend to, oh boy, what's it called? Oh, I can't remember it now. It'll come to me. But it was written by a Polish woman. And, it's called The Red Lion. And it was translated into English about 25 years ago. And it's about a guy who takes the red lion, the philosopher's stone, before he was ready. And what happens is he's thrust into initially the lower astral, and he has to deal with all these thought forms. And it's what we're all, it's his shadow, essentially, because you magnetize to you what's inside of you that hasn't been healed. Yeah. So if anybody's interested in understanding that, they're really good books to have a look at, to understand the layers around the planet.
Definitely have to have a look at it. And interesting what you just said, that he realized that it was basically his shadow, him in a different version. I still, until this day, rarely, but I still deal with them. Sometimes they just came lurking and like, ha 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 ha. Oh, hi there.
This is Millie.
Hi, Millie.
What are you doing?
Yeah, mine is moving too. Maybe they feel each other. Oh, now he's biting me.
Sit down, Baba. Sit down. Go on. Sit down. Sit down. Good girl. Good girl.
Yeah, that was actually also one thing that I later on I was always like super terrified of what I would see, because it's like a circus. It's a really, really insane circus that is going on in that realm. And I don't actually know when the point was, but I had these two voices in my head. And one voice was very vicious, very like pushing it to the limit, very negative, and like, yeah, very vicious, just really, really very mean. And the other voice was like really full of wisdom and knowledge and trust and love. And I still can remember the day that first voice, the negative voice, died, and it just became silence. And that was after my awakening. But what I wanted to say was that, yeah, I had this moment where I was like, okay, I will not run away anymore. I will not be afraid anymore. And I was seeing all kinds of bizarre, I just had my eyes closed. I just saw all kinds of bizarre, like very absurd, horrific faces and things. And I was like, okay, who is projecting that? And I came into this sort of like I came into a castle, and I went down the stairs, and I came into this room, and there was like this dark hooded figure sitting there in a corner, talking to itself like a maniac. So I just went to it and was like tapping it on the shoulder, and then it took away, like it put down the rope, and it was me. And I was like, hi, thank you for making my life very difficult. What's going on? And we started talking. But before that, I was just like super horrified. But I never thought about, okay, maybe there is a core. Maybe there is like this one starting point that I can find out, and I can just go there and look at what is actually at the core. And yes, that's what you just said. It was just my shadow aspect, like a really hooded me sitting in a corner and like talking to myself, like in a very vicious way. And I was like, oh, come on. And I started laughing. I actually started laughing in the moment. I'm like, oh, that's just me. All right, we can handle this. Let's go.
Yeah. I went to a spiritual school for quite a number of years in my 20s and 30s. And one of the things that the school, the teacher would do would be to help us deal with our fear. And I did a lot of different initiations and had a lot of experiences to help deal with my fears. And one of them was with Mothman. Have you heard of Mothman?
Yeah. Yes.
Uienda bakukuchetsa okotesta Assia tokuyanaka. Esto je joshietsa komukeka aziata. So one weekend we did this, we watched the Mothman movie at this event, and it came out, obviously it's 35 years ago, and it was one of those sort of scary movies. And then my teacher said, okay, you're going to have an experience tonight which will help you deal with your fears. And so I went back to my tent, because we had tents and caravans and things. And I'm like, you know, with the cover, you know, the sleeping bag pulled up, waiting and going to sleep and waking up and going, and like, but nothing happened really awful. But people were having, somebody said their caravan was shaking. Someone else was pulled up, you know, out of their body by this. And so a lot of people had really scary situations, but I didn't. It didn't happen. And about 2 weeks later, I'm asleep in bed and I'm having a nightmare, and I woke up, I came up not fully awake, and I could feel the terror. I could feel my heart pounding, but I knew that I was healing fear, and I just surrendered and went back to sleep. And then I woke up again in fear, and like the you know, heart pounding. And then I laid back down and went to sleep. And I did this probably about 4 times. And then at one point I woke up again, but I didn't open my eyes. And over in the distance, probably about, I don't know, like 3 meters away, 4 meters, were these 2 red eyes. And it was Mothman. Esto jeza como kikanatsia. Ezo tushtiasa sietu como yotso oshtiasa. And he didn't say anything, but I realized in an instant of awareness that he does exist, and that he is only there to help people deal with their fear, their unresolved fear, and that he is a good guy. He's got a very specific purpose to help humanity help deal with their unresolved fears. Because I said to him, or him, that you could have been here. The 2 red eyes could have been right close to me and scared the hell out of me. But he didn't. He was way across the room with the 2 red eyes. And I said to him, I understand that it's in us.
Yeah.
It's our unresolved stuff. And that you are exactly what we need you to be. And things like that are a direct correlation to what it is we are yet to heal. And I asked him, I said, what's your name? Because nobody had ever asked him his name. It was really an emotional, because they thought of him as this big boogeyman, you know, big and Mothman and this terrifying being. But he had a very specific purpose of evolution for humanity. And it was amazing, amazing. And he told me his name, and his name had about maybe 10 syllables. Like, I don't remember it now. But he did tell me this long, long, long name. And that was, you know, and that's actually something of trust. Maybe that's why I don't remember it, because when you know somebody's name, it gives you theoretically, you know, some, not control or power, but it gives you an understanding of them in a deeper way. And then I just went back to sleep. So when people talk about demons and talk about evil entities and things, the question to ask is, what is that showing me about me? What can I learn about myself through these experiences? And that is what heals that being. And when you heal yourself, that's what allows that being to evolve when you heal yourself. So it's I've had a lot of sort of interesting, strange experiences around fears, about unresolved fears. And the dark night of the soul can be another one of those moments of profound shift and change in our unresolved issues, because that's how we've been controlled for so many centuries, is through fear. And they become thought forms, they become attached to us and hang out in that lower astral.
Yeah, and the longer that continues, the more physical it can get. Whole beings, whole races can be manifested through that, and then we have problems with them later on, like it is said with the so-called reptiles. It's like, yeah, they are part of you, or part of the humanoid race. That's from the point of my understanding, and that's what I find also so interesting again about all of these different kinds of research, because there are different layers and different perspectives from different angles. You can look at everything and have an understanding that one thing can be many things, and that we always have a part in it when it comes into our life. Definitely. Yeah. I have another consciousness comes through, and it's very through the light language, and that's the warrior. And it when I hear it, like when I focus and hear it myself, it sounds quite dangerous, but it's funny because it sounds dangerous because it is intended to sound dangerous to the dark side. So sometimes I actually address these, not the beings themselves, but the vessels that they are in. So it's like just standing your ground and communicating that we are not going to be afraid of you. We know who you are. I, for myself, remember being at one point a part of that darker consciousness, and I understand it from an emotional and intellectual level now a little bit more also. So it's helping to say like a clear no, and it's not something that comes ever through when I direct it towards or when I share it with other people. It's actually more when I feel okay, a no needs to be said right now, that we see them, we know who they are, and we will just know. We will not allow them to go on like that. So just relating to what we were just talking about, I remember that's something, it comes through not often, but it's also very empowering, because I think that's also a big part of what humanity can learn at this moment. And it's, yes, love, understanding, compassion, not pushing your belief system down the throat of others, but also in the moments when you have to learn to say no, and it needs to be a firm and serious no.
Yes.
That's very important, and at this moment in time especially, we have the chance now to really stand our ground all over the world.
Yes, to step into the role of the lawgiver, to step into the role of, we are not, I've said this so many times, we are not who we think we are. We are creator beings, and it is our will that creates. And we've lost touch with it. It is our will that creates.
And our responsibility, definitely.
Yeah. Esto jezu kumbujetsa makike, ezusteja šušijetsa, unge kama. Ize tušteja šušijetsa kumuke ki kenzi te staja sijata kama. Inge kutsa asie tušteja šušijen bijakokoja. Ezu tušteja zuzeja makike. Ezu tušteja šušijen zakukajatsa. Ezu tušteja šušijatsa mukika. Ezu tušteja ma. Ezotushtea makietsu seasian nanianda keka. Ezotuje jujiana miande eziata komoya. Ike kuka kombuya tsoya. Ezotushtea mukeya. Ezotsaya saya sea muyanda kike. Ezotuje shushiat sakama. Ezetusha. Ezetusha shushiat sakamia. Ekuka asietushea umbaya teaka.
Thank you. And yes, you're right.
Very, very wise young woman is the energy that I get from those words. Ezuyenda bieta koya indana kike.
Wonderful. Oh, that's what I needed. Yeah, it's really motivating to speak it more often. I'm definitely going to do the dancing. I just have been busy and working and just a little bit pushing my body over the limit with like painting 10 hours a day. So yeah, that will be next on my list to do, to feel good.
So would you want to bring through some light language for us as well?
Sure. Era karasari to teaka. Haleu sai nano are. Lire star sai voy get to see ya. Ayo. Ora seva. Hennawaika. Oi. Ora shea. Deso taka.
Beautiful, gorgeous.
Yeah, it sounds that's really joyous. I'm like, whoop.
I know. That's what I was laughing.
Black woman inside of me.
It was very joyful energy, like it's like great celebration that we are bringing through these frequencies, that we are this close to knowing and living the truth of who we are.
Yeah. It's a as you said, it can be a collective or a big group, dark night of the soul, but now there is just so much information and so much more resources and people out there that you don't have to look for information for support very much like we had. Even I am 30 now, but when I went through it about 10 years ago, there wasn't a lot books or even the internet or just people around me where I could turn to. And now we have become so many, and there are so many different personalities and people, and everybody has like their sort of special interest a lot of the times, and we also share with each other. So that's something that I find so amazing. I can talk to people like you that I would have never, like just 5 or 10 years ago, had the possibility to do. And so I have a lot of hope, and I'm very optimistic about just the sort of circumstances that we are in. And we will see how it will turn out. I'm very excited to be alive. Actually, I'm really excited now to be alive and to have an outlet for all of the things that I knew, but I didn't have like any connection in like the material world around me to it. But when you get onto this intuitive journey, it's hard, it's tough, it's definitely an initiation, but I'm completely inside different, and there are so many different aspects of me now inside of me and integrated to a certain degree. I never had the hope. I would never imagine that would actually be possible in this life. So if I can do it from that dark place that I was in about 10 years ago, I have a lot of hope for other people that are waking up and going to wake up.
Yeah, there's that phrase that you are never given more than you can handle. And I really believe that just hang in there, keep dropping deeper into who you are, feeling, acknowledging yourself, finding compassion for yourself. You've got it. We've got this. We wouldn't be here if we couldn't cope and in fact thrive and evolve and ascend with this energy. So
Definitely.
Reach out to people, talk to friends. You're definitely not alone in any of this.
No.
Yeah.
And when I watch different kinds of people and shows through YouTube, and just even like with people that are, you know, talking about the news and the political and the all of the leftist whatever craziness is going on, for example, in America, these conversations are happening in circles that you wouldn't expect it. Like, it's not only the ones who are, you know, very outside and very on the fringe side or on the woo side of things. It's seeping through every layer of society. When I look outside, it's just like, these are hard times because we need to recalibrate, and it's like this transitioning time, and it's a bit confusing and it's a bit chaotic. But times like these, from what I remember, are always like this. So yeah, I definitely also think there's a lot of hope, and you can find people to connect, no matter in like what stage you are in remembering yourself. Definitely.
And as far as the light language goes, how do you activate it in yourself? And what I would suggest for anybody that's interested is to listen to people that speak light language and just talk along with them. Just let it come. It's sort of an encouragement, or somehow it just brings it up in you. So if you want to, and just practice by listening to people that speak it. There's lots of people that speak it. One of my favorite ones is an opera singer.
Ooh.
It's amazing. It's just gorgeous. So there's lots of different ways. I've begun to tone, like to actually sing the light language now, as well as speaking it. So it's definitely evolving within me, month by month. It's changing.
Within me too, and you have to get rid of some of the, you know, blockades. And even still, when people start speaking it, I still get a little bit uncomfortable sometimes. But after a moment or two, you have to open yourself up to it, because it's so different than what we speak and how we speak. It's a completely different reality. And yeah, also I bought myself a drum, and I'm drumming and I'm singing also in light language, and that's also it's a different way of expression. And yeah, it's just a different way of feeling inside. It's wonderful. So I can only recommend listen, watch, have look at paintings of people, and it for sure evolves with time. It took me about 2 years to feel comfortable in writing it, and this sort of perfectionism, it's pushed to the side, just like the ego, just like let it flow, and it will make you feel better and understand more and activate. It definitely goes into the DNA. And the other connections to other parts of ourselves. Yeah, it's a massive thing. It's a really massive thing. So thank you for the conversation. I haven't talked to anybody about it. I think just maybe one person, one starseed that I met that came from the States, but it was only a couple of days. But we were talking about dragons and light language, and it's wonderful. It's definitely very precious, a very precious tool.
It is. And it's becoming, as I've said, more prevalent on the planet. It seems like a lot of people are speaking it, because it is tapping into other whens, other nows from our reality. It is. It just, it's an amazing, amazing time that we're living. And we're very lucky to be living here. Apparently, not everybody was able to hop in, you know, into this point in time. There was a great demand.
Yeah, I mean, the chances of surviving the first, I don't know, 15 to 20 years is not that high. So yeah, congrats to everyone that is still here and still has joy in their hearts, because it's a tough ride. It's a tough ride. It's a very different reality and frequency soup from what most of us are used to and familiar with. But we have worked through all kinds of different scenarios, and yeah, we're just now like in the cloud world. So let's have a laugh and speak some light language and feel good.
Yes, indeed, indeed. Well, thank you so much, Lorra, for this wonderful chat. It's been fun. It's been great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was very lovely.
Okay. We'll speak again soon, in a little while, see how we're both going along with how our light language has been progressing over the next few months.
Yeah, sure.
All right, then. You have
lovely.
a great day. Thanks to everybody for joining us, and much love to you all.
Bye-bye.